We're going to start off then by having a look at the Premier League, and of course we start at the top end of the table. Liverpool, comfortable victors last time out. And Mark, I think we probably expected that they were going to do a bit of business, having not done much last summer, but probably it's fair to say they've done more than what we thought.
Yeah, they have. I wasn't expecting Arne Slot to sort of be so bold in the window. They lost Alexander-Arnold, so they've not replaced him in terms of like for like, but Florian Wirtz will probably get the same amount of assists that Alexander-Arnold did, just from a different position. I thought Ekitike, saw him last season in the Europa League, looked exciting. He's not cheap, but I think that Liverpool were in a position where they didn't spend a lot of money last year. They were able to win the league, and it's sort of what Fergie used to say about, when you're on top, that's when you really should be going for it. I think that they're a very well-run club, and that's what the best tend to do. If you're a badly run club, you get yourself into a mess, and then you spend a load of money trying to recover. The best way to do it is to do it from a position of strength. And
Liverpool in particular, Milton, is probably a bit of a surprise, bearing in mind that the goal threat they've had the last few seasons, but they've looked at trying to increase that kind of goal threat going forward. Mo Salah stays on, but of course Ekitike, as Mark's mentioned, and Wirtz as well, should be delivering up top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a smart thing to do. Salah's obviously signed a new contract, but you can't expect him at his age to churn out the kind of numbers he did last season for the next 2 or 3 years. And yes, so they've signed a couple of really exciting young forwards from the Bundesliga. And I think also, looking at Slot, we've mentioned he didn't need to do much last summer. I think Jurgen Klopp left him a really kind of progressive squad. When you compare to kind of the end of the Ferguson era at United, and that squad he won his last title with, there was no sense of an end of an era when Klopp left, and so that made the transition very smooth for Slot, and now he's in a powerful position to kind of kick on in the transfer market. Yeah.
It's fair to say that not many teams are able to put it back to back and get Premier League titles like that. Is it fair that Liverpool are where they are in the market at the moment?
I think, yeah, they have to be favourites. They set the bench. They're the bench setter, if you like, benchmark setter even. I think personally they're a touch too short though, and I think that they weren't as much better than the field last year than the league table suggested at the end. Yeah, they've done well in the transfer market. But a lot of things went their way. They didn't get key injuries. Salah will go away for a lot of games because the African nations this year starts before Christmas for the first time. So potential to miss more games than even in the usual African nations. And what we've found with that tournament is players can sometimes come back and take a little bit of time to get back into their stride in domestic football. So how much of an effect that'll have on still their key player, we'll wait and see. So I think they're rightly favourites, but this is let's say a unique Premier League season, because I don't think we've had a title race as wide open as this for quite a while now. Yeah. We often get 2 teams going head to head, but you could get 3 or 4 in the race quite late on this season. It's entirely possible.
I think as well, without giving away the tips, the 3 of us have got 3 different teams to win the Premier League, and I can't ever sort of remember. We've been doing these for a while now. I can't remember that being the situation before.
No, we mentioned there the teams probably that most people are thinking are in the running would include Arsenal. They've been knocking on the door of late, Mark. Is that door going to be open this season?
Well, seconditis can become an issue, can't it? 3 years in a row. Like last season, I thought was the time for them to really step up. They did get injuries, actually, a bad time for them. Unlike Liverpool, they ended up with, and you can say it's poor planning to be left with Moreno up front. I think there was some bad fortune as well in that. I actually felt, though, that they took a step backwards last season. I felt that Arteta started to almost believe this sort of set-piece thing and relied too much on it, and that they were not playing to the kind of free-flowing football that they had previously, and were a bit cloggy, really, in the way that they were. I remember they played Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, and there were moments when it was like watching Stoke with the long throws. They're very good at set-pieces. They're the best defensive team in the league. The key question, and I think this probably is, do you fancy Arsenal or not? Can Gyökeres step up from the Portuguese league and get 15, 20 goals that maybe wins them the league.
And that is the question, I suppose, isn't it, Milton, as to Arsenal's title challenge? It seems a lot to put on one player, but Gyökeres is going to have to deliver if they're going to get over the line.
Yeah, it is a lot of pressure. I mean, you know, you look at it last season. I think Kai Havertz was the top league scorer with 9, which and he was injured for from about February onwards. So it is a huge thing, and it's been built up, hasn't it? Arsenal, when they sign this striker, everything's going to be okay. And I'm not convinced it's quite that simple. Really. I do think in terms of the midfield options now with Zubimendi as well coming into what was a real area of strength already, they're superb. Defensively, I've got no concerns at all. David Raya has been terrific in goal, but yeah, as Mark mentioned, there was real long moments in last season where the attacking fluency from open play was pretty much non-existent, and obviously when Saka's not there, then it's a huge issue. And the concern is Arsenal are incredibly competitive and very good in the Champions League as well. But I just felt that when there was a setback, when Saka was injured or Odegaard was injured, I just didn't feel like the rest of them stepped up as maybe Liverpool would have done.
Putting you on the spot early in the show here, Nick, I can imagine you thinking, but the two, as far as the odds are concerned, who look like Liverpool's main contenders are Arsenal and Manchester City. Would you have a preference between those two? Yeah,
it's Arsenal for me. I take on board everything Mark's just said and James has just said about maybe Arsenal going backwards a little bit last season. My take on it is actually they've signed the players this summer that they should have signed last summer, and it might have been a different story. Zubimendi is going to be that quality player alongside Rice, which they didn't really have. Madueke will be a Saka backup, if you like. Yeah. If he ever goes down on these arrests, they've got someone to replace him. They've got the 2 strikers now, in Gyökeres and Havertz, to play 2 different styles, whichever one they want at any time. Lewis Skelly, a year older, looks like he's going to be a quality player, and Wanyeri, he's a really good player as well. We all say in goal at the back, they're absolutely fine. So they're now ticking all the boxes for me, even though I agree they probably did take a step backwards last season. They got it wrong in the window last season. I think they've got it right this time around.
Nick, can I just ask, how do you price up mentality? And sort of, you often hear, have they got the mental strength? Do you just ignore that, or do you have to sort of put that into your ratings?
9 and 10 month seasons are such a long time, and people remember. It's an outcome bias. People remember little things that happen. Arsenal arguably got the closest to turning over PSG. They absolutely battered Liverpool, and Arsenal gave as good as they got. And in key moments, PSG got it done. But it didn't have to end that way. Played the game again 2 weeks later. Maybe Arsenal beat them, and they were the only team that might have done it in Europe last year. So I think it's real fine margins, and the mentality thing. Although I keep it in mind a little bit. I think coming second 3 times in a row is not necessarily a negative. It's more likely to say that they are the closest to kicking on and finally doing it.
I think it's fair to say, Mark, that a number of punters will be scratching their head at Manchester City and thinking, where do they go from here? I mean, not many, if anybody, would have predicted what happened last season. And obviously Rodri being absent for such a long time was a huge blow, and having him back will be huge as well. But obviously De Bruyne's gone now. Haaland didn't look to be the player that potentially we thought he was the season before, and I know injuries had an impact there as well. Where do you see them at this stage?
I'm going for them to win the league. Now, they could finish sort of 4th, and I think if they do, there'll be a lot of people saying, well, this was the start of the decline. I'm just prepared to give Guardiola kind of that faith that he can get it right and sort it out quickly. I didn't see the decline coming, not to the extent. I felt that they, I think we sat here last year and went for Arsenal. So I felt there was going to be a little decline. It obviously went spectacularly wrong. They actually picked up more points than any other team in the second half of the season. Now, they were trying probably more than some of the others because Liverpool had won the league. Arsenal were then thinking Champions League, and City still had to finish in the top 4. But they definitely, I think, improved towards the end of the season. There were glimpses at the Club World Cup of their best and their worst. I think they've signed really well. I think I love Reinders in midfield. I think he's not De Bruyne yet, but De Bruyne had fallen off to levels where he wasn't really recognisable anyway. Marmoush gives them a new option up front that they didn't have this time last year. I actually like their defensive options, even though they probably collectively didn't play well at the back. And Guardiola had his own personal problems last season. So I think you can sort of put that and Rodri together and think, okay, it was just one of them things. That team had reached the end of its kind of line. And I did agree with Nick on Liverpool maybe not being quite as far ahead of everybody as what the league table thought. So that's why I'm going for City to win the league, although it's with a nervousness that, this is a tough league.
We've already touched upon Chelsea, James, and their Club World Cup success, and they are fourth best in terms of the betting for the title. And they've decided to suppose, in a way, gamble with their attacking changes. João Pedro and Liam Delap come in. We said at times last season that Nicholas Jackson, will he come good, will he not come good? But it looks like they've lost faith with him.
Yeah, I think so. And just the commitment to spending heavily on young players, which, has have been doing it for a few years now. If you spend that amount of money, you are going to end up with a half-decent team. And I think they are making significant progress. I think when the Premier League betting was first revealed at the end of last season, they were a bigger price than Newcastle. And obviously the Club World Cup's been a big factor, but they've been a real plunge for them in the title betting. We've spoken about the front three. I think there is still going to be a sizable gap there, but yeah, I think Chelsea really progressive squad. You're looking at players like Cole Palmer and Caicedo and Fernandes. These are world-class players who are 23, 24, and the bold strategy of not sacking the manager after one season may just work out for them as well. So
there might be a temptation, Nick, a little bit with Chelsea to look at that win over PSG and go, they're the real deal. Where are they at in terms, do you think, of challenging for a title?
Yeah, I think they're going to be a lot closer, but they're still, for me, one step away. They haven't got that real dominant centre-back that Liverpool have in Van Dijk or Saliba at Arsenal. There's a few question marks still. Even the two strikers they've brought in, for me, João Pedro, he made some debut in the Club World Cup, but he's still an inch below the real top bracket for me. I wouldn't be surprised if they come third and put themselves in a real mix next season, but that would be where I have them for now.
And I suppose the best of the rest, as we often put it, you're looking at Newcastle, you're looking at Spurs, you're looking at Villa, and then you're also maybe even looking at Manchester United with the dealings they've done, Mark. Of those four clubs, who are you looking at in terms of thinking this should be a better season and we could see them towards the upper echelons?
Well, Man United and Tottenham should have better seasons. Be hard for them to have worse seasons. I think Newcastle, I would say, the most interesting because big doubts over Isak and what happens with him. In terms of him wanting to leave. If he stays, I think it's a massive boost for Newcastle. If he leaves, particularly at this stage of the window, it becomes really difficult to replace him. I felt, they kind of won the trophy last season, so they got that monkey off their back. And then, as James said, I think there was a lot of hype around Newcastle in May time that they would step up, and I think when they get it together and play, that midfield is so strong, Guimaraes, Joelinton and Tonali, that when they play well, and I think Howe's a very good coach as well, but the Champions League took it out of them a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure if they can play at that same pace now. So they could be the team that, if everything goes right between now and the end of the transfer window, where they finish fifth, they could also be the team, if it goes badly, might be the ones that end up being 9th or 10th. So I've got them as the hardest ones to weigh up at the moment.
Ask Mark about Arsenal. It seems only fair, James, ask you about Tottenham. Thomas Frank's obviously come in. I think to most neutrals, they'd say it's a good appointment from Tottenham. Where can Spurs reach this season under the new manager?
I'm disappointed. Mark thinks they're going to improve on 17th, but I think Frank's a good appointment. I mean, it's still hard to get your head around last season, isn't it? With Postecoglou winning the Europa League and then going and finishing 17th, as I said. But the injuries, I think, the injuries were a real factor in that. It wasn't just Postecoglou kind of clutching at straws, looking for excuses. He just couldn't get his best team out there, could he, for 2 games on the trot. And I think Tottenham will be, obviously got the Champions League as well, but I think they'll be top 6. I'm certainly more positive on them.
Brighton,
I like Brighton just in the as you mentioned with Newcastle, if things fall apart for them and United and Tottenham,
Yep.
and Aston Villa seem to be treading water a little bit in the transfer market, they don't want to lose Morgan Rogers, certainly. I think Brighton are there with no European football. Another season under Hertzler, I think they could kind of pick up the pieces and sneak into the top 6 at a decent price.
I've left the biggest conundrum for Nick to answer, which I feel bad about, because the two words Manchester United at the moment probably have punters shivering at the minute, Nick. And you've obviously seen quite a lot of Matheus Cunha over recent seasons. Is he the type of player that can get them moving in the right direction?
Potentially, yes. His work rate without the ball is a problem, and that was made clear at Wolves. Vitor Pereira pulled him up on it a lot of times. But they've got the left 10 and the right 10 sorted now with Mbeumo as well. So it just seems that Man United slightly overpay for every player they buy. That's just what they do. And I don't think they've got value in either signing, and still need a proper spearhead of the attack ahead of them. They were impossibly bad last season. It was like there's a floor of where Man United, that this squad should be, and the new coach couldn't even reach that floor. Now, we all said, he needed a pre-season to implement his style. Yeah. They should have been better than that without needing that. So he's got his pre-season now. The early vibes are that they have improved a bit. Not that it was almost impossible not to. But can they reach that? They've got to be top 6 minimum. They're Man United. Can they do that? The jury is out for me. On Tottenham, personally, I don't think Thomas Frank's a better coach than Postecoglou. I don't think you should take managers from Brighton and Brentford anyway, and I think he might be gone by Christmas.
Okay, well, we shall see. Time will tell. It's time now, though, for the guys to give us their best bets in terms of the title and who they see finishing in the top 4. Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm for the title, going to go for Manchester City, just in the hope that they can kind of get back to what they were. This time last year, they were favourites. Now they're third favourites. Still got Haaland up front, quality in midfield. Hopefully Foden can have a season not like last season. So I'm going for them. And then I think top 4. Really like Chelsea for top 4. I think that there is a gap between there's probably a 3, then a 1, and then another handful. And I think that Chelsea are more likely to kind of join that 3 than they are to slip back. So I'd be very confident on Chelsea for top 4. Less confident on City to win it, but that's what I'm going for.
Milton, in terms of your title winner and top 4?
Yeah, I'm going for Liverpool to retain it. I think you can look at last season 2 ways. Were they not great champions, particularly in the second half of the season, or did they have a bit to spare? And I think when you look at how they started the Champions League campaign as well, they looked the best team in Europe up until Christmas, and then maybe lost their focus in the league when it was pretty much wrapped up. Lost to PSG in the Champions League. But I think that aggressive approach in the transfer market suggests that they're going to be the team to beat again. I think it's going to be tight between them and Arsenal. Arsenal only lost 4 games in the league last season as well, same number as Liverpool. So I've got Liverpool first, Arsenal second. I think Chelsea can finish above City. I just think the City rebuild it just looks a bit frantic to me now. Guardiola's success has been working with a small core of trusted players, and I think it's going to take time for him to work out who that strongest team is. And I still think the squad's a bit lopsided. I'm not convinced by the defence. So I think Chelsea can nick third ahead of City.
Okay, and we've alluded to it already, Nick, that it looks like a wide open title race. Where would your money be?
So I am on the side of Arsenal. I've just reversed Arsenal and Liverpool with Milton. Liverpool comes second for me. I think Chelsea third, and I'll take Man City fourth. And it's so wide open and so unpredictable that if Mark's right and City win it, I won't be surprised at all. I'll take them to come fourth.
Okay, well, it is wide open, we think, at the top. It's certainly going to be intriguing at the bottom end as well. Of course, we've seen in the last 2 seasons all 3 promoted teams relegated from the Premier League. Will it be the same this time around, or will Leeds, Sunderland and Burnley buck the trend? Mark, it's 3, I would argue, pretty decent-sized football clubs who would hope that they could establish themselves as Premier League teams, but it's already shown in the last few seasons it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, but going back the season before, they all stayed up. So I just think, look, just judge each team on their own merits. I won't get too excited that the gap, is it too big? who knows? Like I just think, look at the teams that are there and then judge it. I wouldn't be going on the basis of 2 seasons. I think that's really dangerous. That said, I don't think Burnley will stay up. Wasn't sure about them last season, and they're about to lose James Trafford as we speak. Looks like he's on his way out, and don't think they've done enough in the final third to kind of stay up. Sunderland, I mean, they're having a go at least, but were quite a way off Leeds in the Championship last season, and they have lost Bellingham as well. I think Leeds will stay up. I thought that even they have signed, been quite aggressive in the transfer market, but I actually felt what they were doing last season might have been enough to keep them in the league, and that does make it dangerous. Interested to see, Nick, where you kind of had Leeds last season in terms of if they were a Premier League team, because they were going off like 2-7 and stuff like that in some games.
They'll probably be the highest rated Championship team since Wolves won it, and they came up and stayed up very comfortably. So that is a potential blessing for Leeds. For me, it's almost as much though about the other 17, and if they've all got their house in order, because we have the last couple of years they've all gone. The promoted teams have come down, but there's not been a bad team that have just been sucked into it from the middle of the table. Yeah. A lot of the teams in the middle of the table, your Bournemouths and Fulhams, etc., have been on the upward trajectory. I'm not so sure this year every house is in order. I look at West Ham under Potter and just I see problems. Brentford, new manager that hasn't managed in the Premier League, and best players leaving. The keeper's gone, and Mbeumo's gone, and maybe Visser goes as well, and they lost one midfielder, Norgard, to Arsenal as well. Wolves lost State Nori to Man City and Cunha. They're trying to bring players in, but so far, Arias has come from, he did well at the Club World Cup, but need to do a lot more. Everton, David Moyes is in the paper yesterday saying they need 10 new players. You won't get 10. No. You might get 5 or 6, but if he thinks he needs 10, just won't happen. Will Everton even have the home advantage that they had? They stayed up because of Goodison a couple of times in history. They have. They haven't got that next year. Will they be able to settle in and call this place home straight away? Or if they have no home advantage, it would be pretty Everton-like to get relegated in the first season in a new stadium, wouldn't it? So I'd have an issue over them, and I'd also have a slight concern about Nottingham Forest having to play Thursday, Sunday every week, which they've not had to do before. Gibbs White is staying, but clearly wanted to go. Yeah. They've lost Elanga already. The owner's a bit of a maverick, and if they got, he's obviously told Gibbs White, stay with us for a year, and if we don't get in the Champions League, you can go. So that'll be his target. Yep. So what if they're 14th, 15th after 8 games? Would he fire Nuno? He's the sort of guy that might do it. So I just think they could be a little bit unstable as well. So to answer the question in a roundabout way, I think Leeds could stay up because I think one of those, at least, may be worse than we're expecting, or have been expecting in recent years from the established clubs.
I mean, Nick makes a very good case there for those established clubs in
Of
trouble.
them going down.
At the moment, yeah. I mean, can you see any of the 3 coming up staying up?
I think Leeds are the ones, aren't they? I mean, as Mark said, you take it on a case-by-case basis, and looking at the 3 last season, Leicester lost their manager, lost their best player, had off-field issues. Ipswich had back-to-back promotions, suddenly found themselves in the Premier League, and Southampton, as we saw, were swiftly out of their depth. The 3 coming up now, I mean, Leeds and Burnley got 100 points, didn't they, in the Championship? I think the concern for Burnley is, they were just grinding out those 1-0 wins, seemingly week in, week out. Absolutely incredible defensive record, but you're just not going to do that in the Premier League, and I just don't see where their goals are coming from. I think their top scorer last season was Josh Brownhill from midfield. I think he was out of contract. His future still seems to be up in the air. Yeah. And then you've got the reservations over Scott Parker at this level. So I think Burnley to finish bottom appeals. Sunderland showed real character in the playoffs. Having finished the season in dismal form, it was difficult for them because they knew they were going to be in the playoffs, and so they did sort of limp through the final weeks. But then those late goals that they scored, and again a young, hungry squad. I like the approach that you're not overpaying for kind of big name journeymen. They are buying young players with plenty to prove.
Carl Walker says hello. He was a free try.
Yes, I've got them to finish just above Burnley, but it's going to be tough for those 2.
Best bets for relegation, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, Nick mentioned sort of the potential problems, I've gone for West Ham of those. I mean, this is a team that, was probably closer than most to, to not be in the bottom three because they were all tailed off. But if you think that United and Tottenham can't be as bad, again, that puts West Ham, really close to the trapdoor. The fans are not happy with Graham Potter at all. He sort of defeatist attitude, I don't think really goes down well with West Ham. I mean, even before the Europa League final, he was saying, good luck to Tottenham, which goes down, not the best in East London. They've lost one of their best players in Kudus, and I'm looking around thinking, well, like, if Bowen gets injured, what happens to West Ham? They seem so reliant on him. I think you could make, Brentford would be the other ones, but I just feel like Brentford will, if Keith Andrews isn't doing it, I think they'll just get rid of him really quickly. I think they'll know exactly where they are, and I don't think West Ham have got that same kind of nous in the boardroom to kind of maybe understand how big the threat could be until it becomes quite late. And to just agree with Nick on something else, like Potter, he did well at Brighton, but Brighton is set up for you to do well. Like Chelsea didn't go great for him, so you're going back some time now before he was able to really stamp his authority on a club. So, West Ham might be the ones for me.
What's the better betting play here, Nick? To go with one of the newly promoted teams to stay up or one of the established teams to be relegated?
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount of value necessarily in Leeds to stay up now. I think the market is on to the fact that Leeds are a bit better than the average promoted club and that there are issues at the other ones. So at a bigger price, around 9-1, my selection would be Forest. Chris Wood scored about 30% of his shots last year, which Messi and Ronaldo don't manage over a career, so that has to regress. And the keeper's save percentage was highest in the league as well. So at both ends of the pitch, you have to expect some regression, and that's on top of playing in Europe every week, losing players. I just think that they're primed to slip back down, and the market has them pitched at a level where they're expected to be top half. Now, cast your mind back 12 months ago of the sides that hadn't just been promoted, they were the favourites to go down. Yeah. So things have changed very quickly. In some ways, for good reason, but I think maybe they're slightly overpriced, and if they start badly, could get into a little bit of a rut.
Okay, well, maybe struggles ahead then for Forest. Okay, well, we'll move on now to the top goal scorer market for the Premier League. And of course, we are doing this and recording this prior to the transfer window closing, Mark, which could have an impact, particularly, you would think, with Alexander Isak.
Well, yes, in as much as if he leaves and joins a Saudi club, then, you wouldn't want to be on him. If he goes to Liverpool or if he stays at Newcastle, if I were backing him, I'd be happy with either of those sort of outcomes. Yeah. If he stays at Newcastle, he's on penalties. If he goes to Liverpool, they'll score more goals. So, and he would be my selection. I think he's a quality player that at Newcastle, the team set up for him. And if you go to Liverpool, you just can't help but Darwin Núñez did find a way not to score all those opportunities, but I think the level between Isak and Núñez would be high. So he would be the one for me. Yeah, I'd go Isak, and I think, Nick, you might agree.
I'd actually rather he stayed at Newcastle. I certainly wouldn't have to bet until you know how this drama's been resolved. Yeah. If he goes to Liverpool, I just think the goals will be shared around. Salah has to get his share, Wirtz will get his share. And playing Champions League midweek, Isak might get a few rests for Etikike to play. So I'd actually rather he stayed at Newcastle, was the focal point, the main man. If he does sort of sign a contract extension and with a chance that you can leave next year or something like that, I would then back him each way, and I can't see him being out the first four.
Anything stand out for you, Milton, in this market?
I'm going a bit left field with Evan Nilsson at Bournemouth, who looks a big price given his impressive first season in England. He had 2 months sidelined with a foot injury, still got 10 league goals, scored against Wolves and Man City in the FA Cup as well. I think, Bournemouth have obviously lost some important defenders, but the attacking unit still looks largely unchanged and should create plenty of chances for him. And I think after that first season, I think he could really kick on.
Before we leave the Premier League, Mark, I know you've got another suggestion.
Yeah, it was just Leeds to be the top promoted club. I think they'll stay up, which, if they finish 17th, I think will win the market. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were a bit higher than that. And I definitely don't think that sort of Burnley and Sunderland are going to be sort of 15th or something, and that's where I could see Leeds getting that high. So yeah, Leeds to be the top promoted club.